What is up, guys? In today's video, we're going to be going over a bunch of controller tips that should help you get better at Fortnite, regardless if you play builds or zero builds. If you guys do enjoy this video, remember to give it a like, subscribe if you like to see more, and comment down below whether you use an Xbox, PlayStation, or Switch controller. The first thing we're going to talk about is keybinds, and that it's very difficult to have ideal keybinds in Fortnite without playing either claw or having a paddled controller, because there's so many actions that you need to be able to do in this game without taking your thumbs off the analog sticks. Because if you have to like take your thumb off the analog stick to jump, then you can't be like jump shotting as easily. If you need to take your thumb off the analog stick to hit switch mode, your building's going to suffer. Same with editing, same with crouching. There's just so many things you need to do in this game. So playing claw or having a paddled controller is really ideal. Claw is when your index finger is on the triangle, circle, X square, or AXBY buttons, and this allows you to do all of those like actions without taking your thumb off the analog stick while using a base controller. And some people say it hurts them. Personally, I've played claw since like 2008 and I don't have wrist problems, and like I play a lot. If you try this and it does hurt you, don't do it. At this point in time, it's probably more convenient to just get a paddled controller, but back when I started playing claw, that wasn't really an option back then. If you guys are interested in getting a paddled controller, I am sponsored by AIM Controllers. There will be a link down in the description down below, and you can use code EvolveJake. Our discount kind of varies from month to month, but I think this current month it's 30% off orders of $250 or more, which sounds expensive, but basically if you get a fully decked out controller, you're going to be able to save $90 or so, which is like a significant discount. Again, the controllers are expensive, but that's kind of par for the course with custom controllers, and with my code you will get a pretty large discount, and it is much more affordable. And these controllers have several features like paddles, digital triggers, and bumpers and buttons, making them like mouse clicks as fast as possible. And AIM controllers also have lifetime warranty on the parts they modify, so if it ever does mess up in any way, you can send it back to them and they will fix it. And that is the reason why I partnered with AIM controllers when I did. The next thing that I think is super important if you play controller is to find a consistent sensitivity. And you want like an X and Y sensitivity that feels comfortable for tracking your opponents with hipfire. And once you find a sensitivity that works for you, stick with it and try not to change it unless you really need to. But I've seen countless controller players that go for either like a ridiculously high sensitivity because they think like the higher sensitivity the better, and it really isn't controllable for them and they're not able to consistently land shots. And then I've also seen players that anytime they die or have a bad game or a bad like few bad games, they start changing their sensitivity as like I guess a coping mechanism. And both of those things just make it really hard to be consistent. And same with like going way too low. I've also seen people say they play on like 13 sensitivity, or it's like under the 20s, which is kind of ridiculous. I think you just want something that's like consistent and smooth and something that feels good for tracking opponents while hip firing. We'll kind of get to that more later on in the video, but most like top controller players are somewhere between the range of 40 and 60. So I would try to stay somewhere within that range, or at least close to that range. And again, worry more about like consistency and like how smooth you are, rather than just like how fast you can turn around if you get shot in the back, which is always kind of the thing people are for some reason are concerned with most when it comes to their sensitivity. Another mistake I see a lot of controller players making is that they kind of make excuses or set limitations for themselves based on their input. One example of this I could have is whenever I've talked about like the red eye versus the Cobra DMR, I have people commenting on my videos saying that like they can't use the red eye because it's a keyboard only weapon, and like I play controller. And then I've also seen people say the same thing about the pump, where it's like only keyboard players can use the pump. And again, I'm on controller, and they'll comment this on my like loadout videos, and I play controller, so everything I talk about is from the perspective of a controller player. And while some weapons might not have as strong of aim assist as other weapons, it's still just not good to like set those limitations for yourself based on your input, because at that point you're never going to be able to improve or try different weapons. So try not to do that. If you prefer some things over the other, that's fine, but I wouldn't just like kind of throw things aside just because you play on controller and you have some perspective that some weapons just don't work on controller, I guess. I'm not really sure. Left stick aiming is also something that can just be a huge game changer for a lot of controller players once they kind of integrate it into their game. On controller, it can be difficult to make like small adjustments when you're aiming. So left stick aiming or moving your character side to side to adjust your aim can be super helpful, and it's common in a lot of shooters. This is like a thing that people do in COD. I would imagine it's done in Apex, it's done in Halo, and also in Fortnite, just strafe aiming or moving your character left and right to kind of cover some aim or compensate for not being able to make some of those micro adjustments is very nice. And it also makes you a somewhat more difficult target to deal with in some situations if you are strafing or jumping or crouching, and doing those things to improve your aim while also throwing the opponent's aim off just gives you a huge advantage. But a lot of like newer players just kind of stand still when they're aiming. Like, it's a struggle for them to do both sticks at once. So try to get into the habit of that if you are someone who just stands still when shooting. The next thing is that you want to abuse turbo building when taking walls or swapping weapons. So with how turbo building works in this game, if you're holding down the button for the corresponding build piece, you will place that button once you start building. So for a lot of players, their shoot button is either R2 or right trigger if you're playing Xbox, and that's also your wall button. So if you go to shoot somebody with your shotgun, you could just hold the button and then tap switch mode. So when you go to shoot, you shoot your shotgun and then you quickly tap switch mode while holding the button still, and this is going to make you shoot and instantly place a wall. If you do this too quickly, then you end up not going to shooting your shotgun, you're just going to place the wall. But the point is basically, if you're going to end up hitting R2 to place the wall anyways, you might as well hold it. And this is very, very big for taking walls. Like, if you're going to replace somebody's wall with like your pickaxe swing, the moment you want to hold right trigger on the final pickaxe swing that's going to break the wall. And then the moment your pickaxe hits the wall, you tap your switch mode button. This also works for swapping weapons. So like, if you shoot your shotgun and then swap to your SMG, you could just keep the shoot button held the entire time and tap your swap button. And the moment your character pulls out the SMG, it's going to be firing. Like, the moment it's able to shoot, it's going to start firing. And then you could even, once the shotgun is able to shoot again, swap back to the shotgun and shoot it again, all while only having hit the shoot button once. This will not be the biggest deal with weapon swapping because it'll really depend on the situation and how good your hipfire tracking is. If your tracking isn't on point when you pull out the gun, then you're going to miss. But for taking and replacing walls, this is huge. And if you're someone who like wasn't aware of this, this can be a huge game changer. I know I, for some reason, didn't know about this, and then once I learned about it, it felt like taking walls just felt so much more consistent. So the pickaxe swing that breaks the wall, the moment it hits it, you just tap your switch mode, you hold the right trigger the entire time. And this also goes for if you're going to shotgun take walls. Another big difference maker for a lot of players can be just using a consistent inventory loadout. And if you play builds, you want your shotgun in slot 1. So on controller, you can only swap one direction per button click. So having a consistent layout is super important because like, you need to know, if I'm on my shotgun, how many button swaps I have to do to get to my SMG. You don't want to have to think about that in the middle of the fight. And then same goes for your AR, your mobility, all of these things. So if you just put things in the same order every time, it makes it to where you like build that muscle memory. Whereas if you put things in a different order every single game, it's going to be inconvenient for you to build muscle memory because you're restarting every game. And the reason why you want shotgun slot 1 if you're a controller player is because going from pickaxe to builds back to weapons, for whatever reason, defaults you to slot 1. And those are things you're going to do if you're pickaxing somebody's wall to take it. So if you pickaxe take somebody's wall and then go back to weapon, you're going to be on slot 1. And odds are, if you just took somebody's wall, you want to be on your shotgun. So that's why most controller players put their shotgun in slot 1. If you only play 0 builds, it doesn't really matter which slot things are in, but it does matter what they're next to. So like, I always put my SMG next to my shotgun. That way, when I shotgun someone and swap to my SMG, it's only one button clicked for me to get to the SMG. Then I also put my AR on the other side of the shotgun because if I'm on my AR and someone pushes me, I want to be able to swap to my shotgun. Not everybody does it like that. Some people don't put their AR next to their shotgun, but that is why I do it. Either way, you want to put the items next to what you're going to be using in sequence, essentially, and you want to consistently put them in those spots every time. That way you can build muscle memory. And the reason why you want them next to each other is so you can get to them as conveniently as possible if you are using them in sequence. Like shotgun SMG is just like the easiest combo that most people relate to. Not aiming in with shotguns is another big kind of gap between certain players. So aiming in with your shotgun can be good, but one mistake they make is that they kind of aim in with it way too much, or they feel like they have to aim in to land the shot because they're not comfortable tracking with their hip fire. That was why I was saying you want a sensitivity that you feel comfortable hip firing on opponents with, or tracking opponents with your hip fire. And the reason why you don't want to be aiming in every shot, because it can be good, it's going to tighten your spread, and that is likely going to lead to more damage. But in a lot of the fights where you're using your shotgun, they're just kind of naturally chaotic situations, especially in zero build. Like if you and the opponent are both kind of like strafing and jumping around, then if you need to aim in with your shotgun to hit the shot, it's going to be very likely your opponent dodges it, because when you aim in, your sensitivity is much lower, right? The only time I really aim in with my shotgun is if like the opponent isn't paying attention to me or not able to fight back. So like if someone's like gliding onto me when I'm on the house on the island, sometimes I will aim in for a shot. Or if the opponent doesn't know where I am and I'm catching them off guard, sometimes I will aim in for a shot. If I kind of go around a corner and I know the person's chasing me, then aiming in can be good there, but it can also be risky, because if they slide around that corner or like slide jump around that corner, it might throw you off. And those are the main times you want to aim in, when your opponent really is going to be more static because they don't really know where you are. But if it's like a chaotic situation, or I guess an easy way to put it would be, the more chaotic the situation is, the less likely it's beneficial for you to aim in. Oh, another time where it'd be good to aim in is like if you're playing off cover. That can sometimes be good if you're just kind of playing off cover and then like slide peeking or something along those lines. Then aiming can maybe be fine. But if it's like a really chaotic fight, you don't want to be aiming in it, and it could just like completely throw you off. And that is why I was saying at the start of the video, you want to have a hip fire sensitivity that feels good tracking opponents with, because if you can't do that, it's going to be very hard for you to consistently win shotgun fights in this game. Another thing that you could change in the settings is going to be vibration. This is a setting that makes it to where your controller vibrates when you do certain actions in game, like shooting and maybe even taking damage. I'm not sure. I haven't played with vibration since like Call of Duty 4, and a majority of top tier controller players in like every game I've ever played or followed, they all play with aim assist off, or a majority of them play with aim assist off. It's just like if you're playing the game, it doesn't really benefit you for your controller to be shaking at all. Like it just makes things more chaotic. And can potentially throw off your aim. If you're someone who's just like needs it for whatever reason, like I've talked about this before, and some people just can't play without it for whatever reason, then I mean, do what you got to do. But I would recommend turning it off and seeing if it's something that you can play with off, because I think it's just much better to have this setting off. There's multiple things in the game that remove aim assist, like bushes, corn, the branches of trees, and even windows for whatever reason in this game. All of those things remove aim assist. So, and there's nothing that can really be done about that, but just be aware of it. If you are just going to push into a bush and fight somebody, it's probably not a great fight for you. If someone's in a house playing off a window, you probably don't want to like force that fight. Just most of the time, I want to avoid those situations as much as possible. Dead zones are a setting in this game that basically is how much you move your analog stick before the game registers any input. So the higher the number, the more you have to actually move your analog stick before the game does anything, and this isn't good. In general, you want these to be as low as possible without getting stick drift. I believe that's why it's a setting, because controllers are kind of mass produced. They're not all the same. And also the way you use it creates wear and tear. So a controller might get stick drift on 5, where another one might get it on like 13 or whatever. You know what I mean? Like it just, every controller is different. So everyone's stick drift might need to be different. I play 10-10. In general, like I said, it's best to go as low as you can without getting stick drift. But like the super low dead zones also can sometimes make it hard to make like small adjustments, or to make like to have good crosshair placement. So if you feel like it's just way too like crazy on like the lower dead zones, that's fine. But I feel like somewhere within the range of like 5 to 15 is where you want to be. Like the lowest you can go while still feeling in control is probably the best. And then also another reason why I don't like going super low is because if you have a brand new controller, you can probably get by on the lowest dead zone possible. But as you use it, it's going to get to the point where that doesn't work as well anymore. And then you're going to have to turn it up a little bit. And each time you do that, you're kind of readjusting. So I usually play on like 8-8 or 10-10, somewhere within there. When I was talking before about shotguns, I said that aiming in too much can make it harder for you to react to players with like good movement that are like kind of jumping around and stuff. But this can also be true to an extent with assault rifles and SMGs. If you need to make a large adjustment, then unaiming in real quick and then aiming in again can be super helpful. And this is like a big deal this season because of fights on the island. Oftentimes, if you're on the house on the island, you'll just have people rifting onto you. And if you ever fall behind them when you're trying to shoot them out of the sky, then you're probably not going to catch up if you're aimed in the entire time. But if you can kind of quickly unaim in, get ahead again, and then aim in and start tracking them, that can be like the difference maker in a fight, or like end up like maybe you just beam them out of the air with that. And I do this a lot, and people misunderstand what I'm doing, because back in the day, you would snap aim assist this way by ADS spamming is what people called it. That's not what I'm doing in those situations. I'm just making a large adjustment while I'm unaimed to catch up to the person as they're gliding. So if you're trying to shoot at someone that's like gliding away or using like the ODM gear or the katana and you can't quite keep up with them, unaim a little bit, move ahead of them, and then aim in again and start hitting your shots. So basically, if you fall behind, you want to get ahead again by unaiming, if that makes any sense. Crosshair placement is something I talked about before when I was talking about the dead zones, and this is simply just putting your crosshair where you expect opponents to be. So for example, if you were clearing a house, kind of keeping it at head level would be much better than like looking at the floor the entire time. And a lot of newer players or a lot of people that have never really thought of this, they just naturally kind of look at the ground for whatever reason. I think it might just be because of how they're holding the controller. They're kind of like leaning forward a little bit, but you want to like consistently be putting your crosshair to the point where you have to move as little as possible if a fight breaks out. If you're keeping your crosshair at head level all of the time, that means when an opponent arises, you're not going to have to adjust that much when you get on target, right? But if you're looking at the ground the entire time, you're going to have to like swipe up and then like to the left or right, depending on where they are. You're just going to have to make a way larger adjustment. So keeping it at head level is typically the thing you want to do in most games. And this just makes it to where you can react faster and you're not going to have to make as large of an adjustment. So your aim is going to be more consistent. And this is also something that's super easy to improve. Of all the things I talked about, this might be the easiest. Just like being aware of this and like actively trying to like not look at the ground all the time will probably just make you have like much better crosshair placement. It's one of those things that like most people that don't have good crosshair placement have never really thought about it at all. It's just not hard to like fix this problem. But once you're aware of it, it's super easy to fix and it's going to make aiming in this game so much easier. And then the final thing we're going to talk about is going to be another product that you can buy if you're a controller player to potentially improve your performance in game. This is going to be Control Freaks. They're these little plastic sticks that go on top of your analog stick and they make it longer. And this in turn makes it easier to make small adjustments because you can move the stick more without actually like you can move the stick more yourself, but it doesn't move as much. It's hard to explain, but there's lots of players that use them or just use longer analog sticks in general. I've used them since about 2011 and I am currently sponsored by them. You can use code EvolveJake for 12% off everything on their site, but these are also very commonly sold in stores like Walmart or Target, Best Buy or GameStop if you would just prefer to go in the store and get them. Not everybody likes them. Like I said, I've used them for years. I've known good players that don't use them. I've known good players that tried them and didn't like them. But for the price point, I think it is something that's worth trying and seeing if it is something that helps you improve your aim. I've been using them since like 2011, so 12 years or so, a long time. And I really like them. And they also do offer these grips now, which just go on the stick and add grip. They don't add height or anything. If you do want extra grip on your analog sticks without changing the height at all, because some people don't like the taller height. But that is going to be it for this video. I hope you guys found this helpful or informative. If you did, remember to give it a like. Subscribe if you'd like to see more. Use code EvolveJake on aim controllers and Control Freaks. And let me know down in the comments below which controller you use, Xbox, PlayStation, or Switch. I personally use a PS5 controller, but most of my Fortnite career I played on Xbox controller. I'll see you guys in the next video. Thanks for watching.